more info on marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa, call 205-345-7200 or click on Advertise with Us on our website.
Live from the heart of SEC country, this is your daily fix of grit, guts, and gridiron glory. Welcome to the Deep South College Football Show.
Bowen, here he goes! Georgia retakes the lead!
Breaking down the biggest matchups, the boldest takes, and the deepest rivalries in college football on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
Intercepted! They confused him! Xavier Brown headed the other way! Touchdown Tide!
From Fayetteville to Gainesville, from the Grove to Toomer's Corner, it's SEC football.
Chambers delivers! Touchdown!
Now, here's your award-winning host, Wyatt Fulton.
Welcome into a free-for-all Friday edition of the Deep South College Football Show right here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. We're going to talk a little bit about Alabama today, but we are going to talk a little bit more about the broader sense of the Southeastern Conference here when you look at questions around the SEC. And I guess this is really and truly, some other reporters have been putting out, well, can this SEC team win the SEC championship? We'll ask kind of some of those questions here today on the program. Not everybody can, but we're talking about some big-time questions around the SEC here when you look at the teams here in the Southeastern Conference here. So we'll talk about that today. We'll also talk best players in the SEC. Yesterday we did kind of a would you rather between some of the top teams in the SEC here, like Colin Simmons versus Dylan Stewart, two of the best edge rushers here in the Southeastern Conference here. We did Arch Manning versus Trinidad Chambliss, Cam Coleman and Ryan Coleman Williams, Kewan Lacey and Ahmad Hardy. So Jackson and I talked about that yesterday. Chase, I am interested in your thoughts on some of that here. So the best players in the SEC, as we got Chase Brumfield hanging out with us here, just give me a quick little would you rather. All right, Kewan Lacey or Ahmad Hardy?
Give me Ahmad Hardy.
Okay, Trinidad Chambliss or Arch Manning?
Based off, I guess, lineage and history, I'd go with Arch Manning.
Arch Manning or Gunnar Stockton?
Give me Gunnar. I'd run through a wall for that guy.
Yeah, I'd run through a wall for Gunnar Stockton. Gunnar Stockton seems to want to run through walls with the hits he takes there. Ryan Coleman Williams or Cam Coleman? Similar stats. Both have dealt with drop problems.
Give me Ryan Coleman. Give me Ryan.
Okay. So you're taking Ryan there. Colin Simmons or Dylan Stewart?
I'll go with Dylan Stewart just based off his power. I think he's just a little quicker. So, yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. And then Dijon Lee Jr. or DJ Pickett? 2 5-star freshmen. Both of them lanky as hell. I mean, they're both, 6'3", 6'4", got, great size at corner there.
I give me Dijon. I think in the system he's in, I think he'll flourish a lot this season. Yeah, I'm going with him in comparison.
Last one here, and we didn't do this. Jackson, I'm going to get your thoughts on this here, too, because we didn't do this one yesterday, I don't believe. 2 quarterbacks that probably could have started anywhere else last season, but one of them started the season as a starter, got injured, and kind of ended up on the bench. The other one, 5-star true freshman last season, didn't play a ton, played in 2 games. Austin Simmons or Keelan Russell? We don't know much about either guy right now.
I'll put my Crimson Tide glasses on. I'm going to go with Keelan. I think I know it's a small sample size, Wyatt, but what I saw at 8A, I think it's going to shock a lot of people when they see it on camera. Not to discredit what Austin has done, but I think with Ryan Grubb, I think it's going to be a good combo right there.
Jackson, Austin Simmons or Keelan Russell?
I mean, we saw Austin Simmons play pretty well those first 2 games with Ole Miss, but I think Keelan has the better upside, so I'm also rocking Keelan.
So it's clean sweep. Keelan Russell, 3-zip over Austin Simmons here on the Deep South College Football Show. So we'll talk best players in the SEC. Maybe not necessarily a would you rather, but kind of going through and saying, all right, who's the best player on this roster? How does he compare to the best players on some of these other rosters here? And then questions around other SEC teams here today here on the program. If you're checking us out on YouTube, we greatly appreciate it. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button there. Completely free. does absolutely nothing, doesn't sign you up for anything. There's no email hitting your inbox, completely free. All it does is just help us out. So be sure to hit like and subscribe there if you're checking us out on YouTube. If you're watching us on the Tide 100.9 Facebook page, same thing, right? Just hit that follow button, hit that like button. Again, doesn't sign you up for any newsletters, doesn't sign you up for any notifications or anything like that. All it does is it simply just helps us out. And you're supporting great college football content, or at least I think it's great college football content here. Also saying hey to everybody who's checking us out on X over there on the Twitter side of things. So we greatly appreciate that. We appreciate that. We appreciate you guys and everything there. So looking at some of the best players here in the SEC, we'll kind of go back and forth between these conversations here. The top returning quarterback in the SEC is Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. And I know it was kind of up and down. Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? But it is official. Trinidad Chambliss back with Ole Miss. Head coach Pete Golding. Kejuan Lacey's back in that running back room there. So Chambliss, the leading returner in the SEC, 3,900 yards, 22 touchdowns last season, was sacked just 14 times. Also had a rating of 155.3 there. 22-3 touchdown to interception ratio. One of the best in the country last season here. And I think if you extrapolate his stats over the course of a full season, because remember, we talked about Austin Simmons here just briefly, talking about him versus Keelan Russell. Simmons was the starting quarterback at Ole Miss to start the season. First 2 weeks of the year, he's the starter. He gets those reps there, gets injured in that second game, and then suddenly Trinidad Chambliss kind of takes the reins. He and Austin Simmons go back and forth in that game against Arkansas. And then after the game against Arkansas, which, by the way, was week, 3 or 4? I think it was week 3. So 3 weeks into the season, Trinidad Chambliss is not the starting quarterback. And then suddenly week 4, he explodes onto the scene there when you look at the matchup against the LSU Tigers last season. So now Trinidad is back, 3,900 yards, despite not really playing the first 2 weeks, and then going kind of half and half with Austin Simmons the second week. So, I mean, could we see the SEC have a 4,000-yard passer this season in Trinidad Chambliss? He got damn close last year.
I think so. I think with the pedigree that he did last year, and you're right, he didn't have the full season under his belt, which is kind of scary to me how far they went. Now, they're going to have to replace some key players that they lost last season, but what Pete Golding has, I don't think it's a fluke. I think you're going to see more of something that Trinidad can build off of, especially with the offense that they always be brewing to Ole Miss. So I think he'll be fine regardless.
I think they'll be fine as well. I'm not, overly worried about Ole Miss or anything like that when you look at Trinidad Chambliss and things like that. They're behind Trinidad Chambliss, though. There's kind of a little bit of a wide open race as that QB2. And it is a little open, but we kind of have an idea of what some of these guys could be, right? It could be Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. It could be Arch Manning at Texas. Could it be Marcel Reed at Texas A&M, John Mateer at Oklahoma there? Who's kind of that second best quarterback in the SEC right now?
I'm going to go with John Mateer. I was a big priority in that, especially I know you were big into him before he got injured. He would have probably been top 2 in Heisman voting. Just the way he was able to translate from the Pac-12 to the SEC, I don't think that is probably one of the hardest things to do. But I think he will be fine, especially with Brent Venable. They have a good relationship. They understand what is expected of them, what the SEC, how far they could have gone. Now, they didn't like the result last year. Shout out to Roll Tide. But I think he has more experience. I would trust him more in game situations, and he seems more comfortable in that offense in Oklahoma.
And you think about John Mateer last year, right? He was the leading Heisman candidate coming out of that Auburn game there. And I mean, Auburn was 4 weeks into the season by that point. And so, we're a quarter of the way through the season and we're circling John Mateer saying, yep, that's the one. If he stays healthy, if he continues doing what he's doing, then, that's probably a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback sitting in Norman, Oklahoma. And then about 24 hours later, it came out, hey, he broke his thumb. He's not going to play for 2 weeks, and he may not even be ready for the Red River game against Texas. And even if he is, he's not going to play at the level that he did prior to the matchup prior to that Auburn game. And so I think John Mateer's got a really good shot at, being that upper echelon guy here. I am interested in this because I do watch and listen to a bunch of different other shows. And so, we'll sometimes take ideas from them. We don't plagiarize content, obviously, but, if somebody has a really good idea and it's a topic that I've got a lot to talk about on it, then we may take the idea. And so I was listening to Josh Pate's show, Sunday night, Josh Pate's college football show. And somebody had said the SEC is going to have, 5 quarterbacks over 30 passing touchdowns this upcoming season. And so you look at it, nobody had 30 last year. Diego Pavia led the conference with 29, Ty Simpson at 28, Arch Manning at 26, Marcel Reed at 25. You had 4 quarterbacks have more than 25 passing touchdowns last season, much less 30. And so obviously Pavia's now gone off. He's with the Baltimore Ravens. Ty Simpson, first-round pick in Los Angeles. But Arch Manning, Marcel Reed, Gunnar Stockton, they're all back. Joey Aguilar next up on that list. He did not get his waiver, so therefore he headed off to the NFL as well. Trinidad Chambliss is back. Taylor Green, he's gone. He's now a Cleveland Brown. DJ Lagway's not even in the conference anymore. Blake Shapen, I have no idea where Blake Shapen ended up. I have no idea.
Me neither. I'm still trying to figure that out.
I hope he's all right wherever he is, but I ain't got a clue in the world where Blake Shapen ended up. That's the top 10 passing touchdown leaders last year in the SEC. Pavia at 29, Simpson at 28, both gone. Manning at 26, Reed at 25, Stockton at 24, they're back. Aguilar at 24, he's gone. Chambliss at 22, he's back. Green at 19, gone. DJ Lagway 16, now he's at Baylor. Blake Shapen 15, we don't know where he's at. That's it. That's the top 10. And then you even roll on down a little bit. Cutter Boley, no longer at Kentucky. John Mateer is back. Lenore Sellers is back. Gunnar Stockton, gone. Bo Pribula, or not Gunnar Stockton, excuse me. Garrett Nussmeier, gone. Bo Pribula now sits at Virginia. Michael Van Buren, don't know where he ended up. Jackson Arnold's now at UNLV. Kamario Taylor down at 5. And he's still at Mississippi State. But even still, we're 18 deep here now when you look at these quarterbacks. Can the SEC, I hate to say it, can the SEC even have one this year? Throw for 30 touchdowns? If you're just talking about the regular season, right? If you get into the playoffs, okay, maybe Georgia does make a deep run and then Gunner's got 31 at that point. But is the SEC even going to have one guy toss for 30? Because
I don't know why. Looking at last year's stats, I don't think anybody clipped 30.
Defense in the sport is making a massive resurgence here, especially when you look at, we've already talked about it, Elko at A&M, Venables at Oklahoma, Womack here at Alabama, Kirby Smart at Georgia there. And by the way, Will Muschamp's now the defensive coordinator at Texas. And so, you're going to be playing a lot of really stout defenses here in the SEC. And again, looking at it here, half these guys are just as capable running the ball into the end zone as they are to throw it in, right? Marcel Reed, a very dynamic runner. Arch Manning's got the legs that if Arch Manning can put it all together, and again, I don't want to make this, a massive, Texas is all this type show, but if Arch Manning can put it together, we saw the arm in the second half of last season. We know he's got the legs. We saw that in the Michigan game. If Arch Manning can put it together, he theoretically would have the arm of his uncle Peyton and then the legs that nobody in that family's had since Archie did with the New Orleans Saints. So, Arch Manning is just as likely to run it in as he is to throw it in. Same with Marcel Reed. Gunnar Stockton, we know what he can do with his legs because we've seen it before, right? Gunnar Stockton was the third leading rusher on that Georgia offense last season behind Nate Frazier, behind Chauncey Bowens. Georgia had 3 players with over 100 rushing attempts last season. Gunnar Stockton was one of those 3. And so, again, Trinidad Chambliss, he had 22 passing, yes, but at the same time, he also had 10 to 12 rushing touchdowns as well for Trinidad last season. Even some of these other guys, John Mateer, right? Very, very dynamic player with his legs. And Austin Simmons, very, very dynamic player with his legs. Even some of these quarterbacks that we don't yet know are guaranteed to be starters, but we kind of have started to circle and say, all right, this could be a starting quarterback in the SEC. Kenny Minchie at Kentucky, he's a very, very dynamic player with his legs. And in Notre Dame, when he was playing for Notre Dame, used him a lot in the run game as well. Keelan Russell, we saw it on A-Day. He's got the ability to make guys miss and make plays with his legs. I think if Alabama starts Keelan Russell over Austin Simmons, you're more or not Austin Simmons. Wow, I got names all over the place. If Alabama starts Keelan Russell over Austin Mack, I think you've got maybe less passing touchdowns. You may be better overall as an offense based on what we saw on A-Day, but you may have less passing touchdowns, more total touchdowns, if that makes sense, because Keelan Russell's that dynamic with his legs there. And so Lenore Sellers, he had 13 passing touchdowns last season, but we know what Lenore Sellers can do. I told Jackson this as well. I hate to draw the comparison because it seems like every African-American quarterback at Auburn gets this label, but legitimately Lenore Sellers reminds me of like Cam Newton light, with the strength and the power that he's got in the run game and what he can do with a strong arm there. Not saying he is Cam Newton, not saying South Carolina is going to be 2010 Auburn. And I hate to draw this comparison. Lenore Sellers does remind me a little bit. He's got a little Cam Newton in his game. And again, I hate to draw that comparison because, Jeremy Johnson got that label at Auburn there. Byron Brown got that label at Auburn there. A couple of other guys as well. Nick Marshall got that label at Auburn there as well. But so I hate to draw the comparison. Sellers might have a little Cam Newton in his game. Don't know what that means for South Carolina this year, but if he can do it, South Carolina could be a little more dangerous than we're anticipating.
Do you think if he's able to correct a lot of his mistakes and really just his decision makings, it could be on that caliber too? It bolsters that program because a lot of people last year prior had South Carolina going really, really far, enough to even touch an SEC championship berth. So I'm not shouting that down because he has it. Corey Miller, he boasts Lenore Sellers every chance he gets.
Right.
So I think it's possible, but I do agree with you though. I don't like that every quarterback of that frame gets compared to Cam Newton because Cam Newton is one of one, even though he played for the team we're not going to talk about. But I feel like Lenore's can be his own quarterback. It's just that shadow that follows him. Can he be like a Cam Newton per se? Yeah,
and so, is the SEC even going to have one 30-touchdown leader or one guy with 30 passing touchdowns? Now, if you're talking total touchdowns, I think you do have a possibility of 5 guys getting that label there. But in terms of passing touchdowns, I see a hard time with 5 SEC quarterbacks hitting that label, especially if you're just talking about the regular season. Now, again, if the SEC gets a bunch of teams in the playoff or, you end the regular season with a bunch of guys at 28, 29, 27, something like that, and the SEC has a really good bowl season, then okay, maybe it happens. But 12-game regular season, with the way defense is played in the SEC, with the athletes in the SEC, I really don't see a way where there's 30 touchdowns or 30 passing touchdowns among 5 different players here in the SEC. Hey, on the other side, let's talk about questions and concerns for each team in the Southeastern Conference here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
Any problems you got with a damp crawl space or a crack in your foundation? They even do pest control and lawn care. Full service Alabama Professional Services at alabamaprofessional.com.
What does it mean to advertise and do your marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa? Melissa started her business in 2014. What would you say to someone considering Town Square Media Tuscaloosa?
My experience with Town Square Media has been awesome, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I think that this is the first time in my marketing experience that I've been able to see my return on investment. I would definitely say in the past that has not been the case. In this, I like knowing that that's 100%. A lot of the marketing we've done has been radio. You guys have so much more to offer than that, whether it's, websites from targeted marketing to radio. You are kind of a one-stop shop, and it makes doing marketing so much easier. So I would definitely recommend it.
For more info on marketing with Town Square Media Tuscaloosa, call 205-345-7200 or click on Advertise with Us on our website.
Alabama fans are all over the world, and we are too. Download the Tide 100.9 app right now in the App Store and Google Play, and take the Crimson Tide everywhere you go.
Hanging out on a beautiful Friday here in Tuscaloosa on the Deep South College Football Show. Again, if you're checking us out on Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, wherever you may be, watching the show from. We greatly appreciate it, and we appreciate you guys for supporting the show, supporting the channel here. We're talking questions for each SEC team here as we get ready to roll into the 2026 season. We're about 2 months and a week away from SEC Media Days. So we're rocking and rolling on through the college football's off season, even though, let's be honest, Jackson, this sport really doesn't have an off season. I mean, we're talking about playoff expansion. We're talking about games getting canceled, changes to the scheduling. We got SEC, spring meetings coming up here in about 2 weeks here. We got SEC spring meetings. I'm stoked for the fireworks that hopefully we get down in Sandestin, right, with Greg Sankey, Greg Byrne, Kirby Smart, because I've got a feeling that some of these coaches have got a lot of things to get off their chest. So at SEC spring meetings, that should be a lot of fun down in Sandestin, Florida, a little bit later this month here. I believe Ryan Fowler will be down there for Tide 100.9 covering the event. So we may get Ryan on the program just to kind of talk a little bit about what's going on down in Sandestin, Florida here. But looking at these SEC teams here, biggest question for each team entering 2026. Now, a lot of these teams, they've got more than just one question, one thing where you say, okay, if they fix this, they can compete for an SEC championship. A lot of these teams got more questions than that. But what is the biggest question for each of these SEC teams here? We'll start with the hometown team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, just because we're going in alphabetical order and Alabama's first. But looking at Alabama here, Jackson, in your opinion, what is the biggest question for Alabama entering the 2026 season here?
I think it still remains that it's the offensive line.
Yeah.
And you could even possibly throw in linebackers with that.
Yeah.
But I think every other position group is pretty much a done deal, except for also, I guess I would throw in the kicker position.
You've got a battle between Connor Talty and Lorcan Quinn there at kicker for the University of Alabama. Yeah, the biggest question is the offensive line. Now, you go through the full roster for Alabama, and we know Alabama's roster a little bit better than the rest just because, again, we cover Alabama here in Tuscaloosa. Written component online, though, or we cover them online. On the show, we like to talk about the entirety of the SEC here. But for Alabama, I mean, secondary should be, one of the best in the country. Wide receiver, very, very deep unit. Probably need some guys to take some steps, though, to be successful this season. Tight end, you expect Caleb Edwards to take that next step as that year two guy, that year two starter there at the tight end position. Defensive line, they got bigger, they got beefier on that defensive line. But the question mark comes at running back, linebacker, and along the offensive line here when you look at the University of Alabama here. But I think that biggest question is the offensive line. Can you get better in the run game? We tend to say that answer is going to be yes, because there's really nowhere to go but up when you look at the University of Alabama and the run game there and the offensive line. The offensive line started the season okay. Florida State wasn't the best matchup, but during that middle stretch of the season, those 4 ranked SEC games Alabama had against Georgia, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Missouri. Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Tennessee in that order. The offensive line actually played really well in those games. Against Georgia, we always really hype up the Georgia defensive front. Well, Alabama kind of did their job against Georgia's defensive front, scored 21 points in the first half, and 24 total, and that's all Alabama needed to beat the Bulldogs down in Athens. They handle Vanderbilt there. They get a scare at Missouri, but the secondary secures that victory there. And then Tennessee was, I kind of feel like, the most complete game Alabama played last season. Run game was efficient enough. The quarterback position was really, really good against Tennessee. Receivers made plays, and then that defense was able to shut down the high-powered offense that Josh Heupel brings out of Knoxville, Tennessee there. So for Alabama, it is that offensive line. And you feel like Alabama's going to get better along the offensive line because there's nowhere to go but up, right? If you're sitting at the bottom of the totem pole, well, if you're worse, then okay, you're still at the bottom. But if you're better, all right, you're at least, rising up the ranks there. So for Alabama, it's the offensive line. You at least feel like they've got to be better, because if you're at rock bottom, the only way to go is up for the University of Alabama. Looking at Arkansas here as we roll into the next slate of teams here that we're talking about, the Arkansas Razorbacks here, their biggest question: can they get a stop on defense, man? Arkansas lost 9 games last year by 1 score. That's it. 9 one-score losses for Arkansas. The lone loss that wasn't 1 score was the Sam Pittman get-out-of-town game against Notre Dame when you had to deal with Jeremiah Love and Shadarian Price. And so 2-10 last season for Arkansas. You still expect the offense to be okay because that's where Ryan Silverfield's specialty is along the offense, quarterback, receiver, run game. So don't know that we're really worried about the Arkansas offense, although it will feature a lot of new faces with the departures of Taylon Green and Mike Washington. But you kind of expect, A.J. Hill, K.J. Jackson, and some of those guys to maybe be able to take that next step and still have a decent offense for Arkansas there. But defensively, Jackson, this was one of the worst defenses in college football, not just Power 4. Arkansas was ranked in the bottom 120 of college football last season defensively. It just total defense, passing yards, rushing, the whole 9 yards. Arkansas was a bottom 10 team in the country last season on defense. So for me, my biggest question up in Fayetteville there, beautiful city. My biggest question up in Fayetteville is, can Arkansas stop anybody when you look at this schedule here? Because they do play some pretty high-powered offenses. They got Texas. They got Georgia on the schedule there. So when you look at Arkansas here, Jackson, is it the defense? Is it, can you get some version of a defensive stop here?
I would assume so. I mean,
yeah,
you can't finish in the bottom 120s in total defense and you're in the SEC.
No, that's just, you can't do that if you're Arkansas here. Moving on through, looking at Auburn. For the Tigers, it's new head coach Alex Golesh, new quarterback Byron Brown, new receivers, whole new team. Outside of the running back position, Jeremiah Cobb, we know he's going to be really, really good. DJ Durkin back as that defensive coordinator. Xavier Atkins back at linebacker, one of those defensive leaders for the Tigers last season there. DeMarcus Riddick, you expect him in his third season at Auburn to take that step and be a premier playmaker off the edge for the Tigers there. But the biggest question for Auburn, can South Florida's roster talent, because that's effectively what Auburn is this season, no disrespect, but can South Florida's roster talent play at an SEC level for 9 conference games? Can they take that level of play and elevate it to what it will take to win in the SEC?
I highly doubt it.
Okay.
I mean,
why? Because they scared Alabama twice. They've beaten Florida, so they can do it in one-off situations.
Right. And
can you sustain it, though?
And this is like, I am kind of speaking out both ends here, because the other day I said I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn was finished in
the top half of the SEC
versus the bottom. But, that relies heavily on that group of 5 roster being able to, like you said, compete for 9 conference games within the SEC.
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't be shocked if they were able to do it, but I do doubt that ability for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you look at the schedule here. I mean, you start SEC play, and it's just shot after shot after shot. Florida, Vandy, Tennessee, that middle 4 games there, at Tennessee, at Georgia, LSU, at Ole Miss. 3 of those 4 are on the road, and you're playing the most physical team in the SEC in Georgia, probably one of the hottest teams in the SEC right now in LSU, and Ole Miss, who is in flux as well. But
yeah, Auburn hasn't beat Georgia in Athens in, I think, 15 years.
Something like that. They haven't beaten Georgia since 2017.
Yeah, and then they lost to them in the SEC championship game.
Right. I mean, haven't beaten Georgia since 2017. Haven't beaten Alabama since 2019. I mean, haven't won in Tuscaloosa since 2010. Haven't won in Athens since I believe that same season. Maybe 2013. No, 2013 was in Jordan-Hare.
Because that was the prayer Jordan-Hare.
Right, that was the prayer there. So, I mean, probably that same time window, you haven't beaten Georgia in Athens. So, Auburn, can the group of 5 roster elevate their level of play to a point that, they're able to be successful here in the SEC? Let's go ahead and take a break. And on the other side, we'll dive back into the rest of the SEC teams here. We'll jump out of the phone lines as we'll head down to Louisiana and talk with our favorite Texas fan here on Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC.
It's quick, it's easy, and it's free. Go to mylocalcustomers.com today.
That's mylocalcustomers.com. mylocalcustomers.com.
The best station in the state, breaking down Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Welcome back into Tide 100.9 and 1230 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports. Let's head on down to Louisiana and talk with our resident Texas expert. How you doing, Digger?
Doing fine. Who is the DC at Auburn?
DJ Durkin.
Todd Orlando? Oh, it is Durkin. So they didn't bring Orlando, did they?
They did not. No, they kept Durkin on that roster or on that coaching staff.
So, and he's not an analyst. Orlando is. He's not on the staff at all.
I am not entirely certain of that, actually.
I was intrigued by it simply because that guy will crunch tape for one game. He'll circle a game on the schedule. And he did this twice with Alabama and damn near beat y'all.
Yes, he did.
He gave Florida fits, Miami fits. I want to say they gave Georgia Tech all kinds of trouble. So I didn't know if it was going to be Durkins or not. So, yeah. Look, I can see it middle of the road and everything, but that's Auburn. Come on, man. He's the first-year head coach. Give him some time, for God's sake. I mean, we don't even know if they got a decent quarterback, do they?
Well, Byron Brown will be the starter, so if you take his tape from South Florida, you expect him to be decent, but you're not playing Tulane and Army and Navy now. You're playing Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, and Georgia.
Enough said. Okay, look, real quick, special team. Who's your best player, special teams in the SEC? Hello.
We haven't gotten that far. We haven't gotten that far. I think Tate Sindell at Oklahoma's got a case for it.
Who?
Tate Sindell.
Who? Oh.
The Lou Groza Award winner.
Ryan Niblett is the best punt returner in the SEC/kickoff returner if you get it out of the end zone.
He is one of the best, yes.
He should have been an SEC, like I was telling Jackson, should have been first team SEC, but they gave it to Concepcion for whatever reason. Okay. And then he finished second behind, what's his name, for the special team player of the year in Iowa. As far as yards.
I know who you're talking about,
I'm telling you, this guy. So the point I'm trying to make is, you can't even get 5 yards near Niblett. They got it down pat, and I'm telling you, there is going to need to be some special team play in the SEC if you want to finish this season with a winning record, for God's sake. I mean, that's what he single-handedly beat Mississippi State. We were dead in the water.
Beat Texas.
If it wasn't for him.
You remember that onside kick? Where was Niblett in that onside kick?
He wasn't there. He's not on the hand team. He was in the very back. What's the matter with you? Holy cow. So, I'm just saying, scrounge around. You're not going to find anybody. They thought it would be Brown, who was at Kentucky and went to LSU, and he was a non-factor.
He was a non-factor.
He ended up getting drafted.
Satania at Oklahoma is pretty damn good in punt returning.
Oh, please. Come on. How many did he return? One,
yeah.
One? Uh-huh. That's what I thought. All right, let me get back to my kale salad. Holy cow, it's disgusting. Later.
All right. All right. I should have asked him what Texas's biggest question is. I should have asked him that. He's nothing for Texas, probably. Looking at Florida here, the biggest question for the Gators here. Jackson, what is your biggest question surrounding the Florida Gators for this upcoming season? New head coach John Summerall, new quarterback. We anticipate probably Aaron Philo winning that job at the transfer from Georgia Tech, as Buster Faulkner, the Georgia Tech OC, is now sitting in Gainesville. But what's your biggest question around the Gators in Gainesville?
For me, I don't think it's really around offense. I mean, you're retaining Jaden Baugh. You bring in Philo. You bring in Singleton.
Dallas Wilson's back.
Yeah, like you're loaded at your skill positions.
Yeah.
For me, I think I would lean defense. I mean, you struggled to stop USF last year.
Yep.
Outside of that, I don't think there are questions on the offense. I mean, maybe special teams. I know that's kind of a cop-out. Everybody's got questions on special teams, but
right,
definitely probably defense.
It's the defensive side of the ball for me, too, for Florida there. Jackson did a great job of explaining it there. Dallas Wilson back, Jaden Baugh back. You bring in Philo. You bring in Singleton there. Skill positions on offense, you expect to be pretty damn good when you're looking at Florida. And then you've got one of the best young OCs in the game in Buster Faulkner there commanding that offense for the Florida Gators there. Trench play is a little concerning, losing Jake Slaughter, the first-team All-SEC at center there. But Florida's a program that you look at them and you say, all right, you should never be deficient along the offensive line. We always say there's certain programs where you just kind of say, yep, we expect that to be a check mark. Yes, it may be a question right now, but we still expect it to be a check mark positive for the team, right? It's defensive back at LSU and Alabama. It's wide receiver at Ohio State. It's linebacker at Georgia. For Florida, it's probably the offensive line. So even though we may have a couple of questions around that offensive line for the Gators, we expect it to be a positive there for Florida. I'm sticking with the defense as well. Can that secondary kind of limit some of these high explosive attacks that they're going to see this season in the SEC? For Georgia, I mean, if Jackson, if there's one team that we know really well on this program, it's Alabama. If there's another team that we know maybe as much as Alabama, it's Georgia. Just because, you know a lot about Georgia. We talk with Randy from How About Them Dogs cast a bunch about the Georgia Bulldogs there. And so I feel like we've got a pretty good understanding of Georgia. For me, it's wide receiver. It's pass catcher, right? We expect the secondary. Georgia did not add a ton of transfers, but the ones that they did were key additions, right? The safety from Clemson there. You go out and add some defensive line help, losing a couple of guys on that side of the ball there. You retain a lot of your big weapons on offense in, Lawson Lucky, Caden Prothro, adding him. The offensive line's back. Stockton and the running backs are back there. Raylan Wilson's back for Georgia. KJ Bolden as well in the secondary. So even though there may be a question mark in the secondary, same thing. We look at Georgia and we say, all right, we expect that to be a strength in Athens. But wide receiver is a position that Georgia doesn't have the best track record of, at least in recent history under Mike Bobo and Kirby Smart there. I understand they had George Pickens and Zachariah Branch over the last few years, but it doesn't have the best track record. Now, they did add Isaiah Canyon, but outside of that, for me, it's who steps up outside of Isaiah Canyon. Is it Trey Taylor, the former 5-star receiver? Is it, London Humphreys, who had the big 4th down touchdown in Knoxville to, propel Georgia past Tennessee in that game?
It's going to be Taylor and C.J. Wiley.
C.J. Wiley, okay. That's a name I haven't heard a ton about.
Another 5-star. He made some pretty big catches in that G-Day game. He came in, I believe, with Taylor, same class.
Okay.
And then you have London Humphreys, who's returning. He's kind of their Lad McConkey 2.0. And then Sokovie White-Helton, he made some big plays in that Sugar Bowl. He's going to be the Zachariah Branch replacement with his speed and, the smaller size. So, and Canyon, he can be that Colby Young on the outside. You have Helton to be that Zachariah Branch type. You got Lawson Lucky and Prothro to be, and Elias Williams and the plethora of tight ends that they have.
I think Georgia's legitimately 8 deep at tight end is what it feels like.
Yes.
So that's not a question at all for Georgia. So you're rolling with the pass catchers there, but we've got some names to keep an eye on. Like you mentioned, C.J. Wiley, I just completely blanked. Helton. What was his name?
Sokovie White-Helton.
Sokovie White-Helton there. London Humphreys as well. So Isaiah Canyon coming in from Georgia Tech. So you got some guys that we think can be taking that next step for Georgia. For Kentucky, can you just compete? can you just look competitive in some of these games if you're Kentucky here? For me, at least my biggest question for Kentucky is, can you compete? You don't necessarily have the roster that, most of the SEC boasts. You're still a pretty talented roster, obviously, but you don't necessarily have the best roster that the rest of the SEC has. And you don't necessarily have the finances in football to go improve your roster at the same clip as some of these other SEC teams. So new head coach Will Stein, new quarterback Kenny Minchey, couple of new weapons there. CJ Baxter coming over from Texas at running back there. Can you compete? Can you give Kentucky fans a reason to have hope for football in year number one under Will Stein here, the new head coach here? Jackson, what's your thoughts on Kentucky?
I think they can be pretty competitive. Will Stein can dial up an offense against anybody, really. And so if Kenny Minchey is that guy that, they brought him in to be that, not necessarily game breaker, or game changer, but, an above average, not necessarily have to be elite in year one, but above average, make the game competitive, hold possessions, and kind of slow down the game, I could see it.
I like it. I like it a lot. On the other side here, we'll wrap up the loose ends here on Tide 100.9. Get you ready for the game with Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9 at 12:30 AM WTBC, your home for Alabama Crimson Tide sports.
Inside the Alabama Crimson Tide with the Gary Harris Show.
Hey, it's Gary Harris. Monday morning at 9 a.m., we're going to recap the weekend with you, including Alabama softball and baseball, plus Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com and Casey Smith on golf. All that, plus your phone calls. Monday morning at 9 a.m.
Catch the Gary Harris
29. That's 800-923-6829. What do you have to lose? Call 800-923-6829. Again, 800-923-6829.
Want to know what's going on with the Crimson Tide? Download the Tide 100.9 app today.
Only got just a couple of minutes left here on the Deep South College Football Show, so we'll kind of run through some of these teams here really quickly here. LSU, can that roster, biggest question for the LSU Tigers here, can that roster mesh early on? A lot of new faces, Sam Leavitt, Jordan Seaton, the big two at quarterback and left tackle. We got our first look at Sam Leavitt in an LSU jersey yesterday on social media there. Can this roster gel early? Because they've got some big games on that schedule early. What does Clemson look like? Can they handle the Clemson Tigers in the real Death Valley early in that season? You get a cupcake against Louisiana Tech, and then you're going to Oxford for the just incredible matchup against Ole Miss there in the Magnolia Bowl. And then you got Texas A&M, a former rival of LSU's, or I guess, is Texas A&M one of their permanent opponents for the next 4 years? Yeah, so you'll still get Ole Miss and Texas A&M on that LSU schedule on a year-to-year basis here.
Texas A&M, LSU, yes.
Yeah, Texas A&M, LSU. And so you've got two big rivalry games early in the season, and then can you – because we expect them to be really good in the back half of the season, right? They kind of enter that lull. They get Mississippi State, Kentucky, a couple of other, not great teams in the SEC later on in that schedule. But can LSU compete early?
Yes, I think that's important, but I think what's most important is what you said, is can they be gelled enough in that back half of the season? Because I think if they're gelled enough when Alabama comes to town, that's going to be rough. That's their biggest, because it's similar to Auburn, like if for LSU fans. They could lose a few games, but as long as Lane Kiffin can beat Alabama, they're having a crawfish boil with him after the game.
Well, I think beating Alabama in 2022 maybe gave Brian Kelly an extra year on the back end of that deal there when, LSU didn't perform to their standard 2 seasons ago. And then obviously last year getting smoked by Texas A&M at home was just that was the straw that broke the camel's back there for LSU. So I don't know. We'll see when it comes to the LSU Tigers. But if they can't mesh early, if they can't do it, you've got a really tough team in Clemson, and then you've got to go on the road to Ole Miss, and then you got to play Texas A&M as well. I mean, if LSU, I think worst case scenario for LSU is their 3 losses coming out of the first 4 weeks of the season, back against the wall for the entire rest of the season with matchups against Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee still on that back half schedule there. So that'll do it for us today here on the radio side of things. Tide 100.9. Coming up next, the game with Ryan Fowler from 2 until 4:15, and then Alabama baseball takes over.